the crystal raindrops fall on the window down the hall. It becomes a morning dew, yeah. And darling, when the morning comes and I see the morning sun, I wanna be the one with you, just the two of us.
Let's go. I see everybody's hopping on right now. Ron, good to see you, brother. Not see you. I see you popped on, but I don't see you. Good to have you. Oh. Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, my sound is on. Good deal. All right. Actually gonna get this party started. Just in 1 minute. Boom. Okay. All right. Good to be back on a Monday night with MPTA. I like talking about these things. Keeps me on track and focused with my stuff too, believe it or not. It just makes sure I'm in integrity with what the things are that we need to be looking out for. And not just for everybody else's business, but for my own business. So these talks are always a good reminder, is what I want to say. So let's get started, people. Navigating the territory. Let's go. Understanding business structure for your trucking company. And of course, if you didn't know, now you know. This be me, Cheston, Bulgin, Senior Consultant at By the Books Consulting. And you can always reach me at 888-4BTB now. That's 888-428-2669. That's the main office line. You can reach us here at that number in case you have anything business related that you need to discuss, especially with the conversations that we have here. You want some clarity, some insight. You need a partner in this area. That's how you get a hold of us. You can also go on the website, bythebooksconsultants.com or at youraccountingsuperhero.com. And of course, you can reach out to me directly via email. And we get into conversations like this, not only conversations, but create some actions so that you have clarity. Clarity that will deliver freedom, wealth, and legacy inside of your trucking company. And there it is. Some of the things we're doing right now, we have actually changed the game in terms of how we operate and provide services to people like you to make a subscription service that encompasses pretty much everything that you would imagine in this area of business, so that you always have a good set of eyes on what it is that you're doing, whether it's making sure you're tracking everything properly, have the systems in place to do that, to what does that number story mean inside of your business, how to create the next action plan based on performance, which is by the books performance, by the books philosophy for performance, which is what the numbers tell us. Again, this is how you reach us to do that. And a quick disclaimer before we get started, as usual, following is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered financial, accounting, or legal advice. Please consult your tax, accounting, and/or legal professional for specific advice. And if we're looking to forward the conversation that we have here each Monday night, this is how we do this. We can provide feedback, what it is that's going to make the difference for you. You can share via email, Instagram, or LinkedIn. What is it that you think would make the most difference inside of our conversations on Monday nights? Love to hear you. You can drop me a line by any of these means, and we'll start steering the conversation toward those things. And each night that we get together, this is my promise, you'll gain at least one thing that will help you survive and thrive in trucking. You will gain a new level of clarity on actions to take over and over again that will make the most impact in your business. That's the goal, and that's the promise. So for the last few weeks, we've been talking about this whole by the books philosophy. We're in that world. We're talking about how the numbers can really be tracked, monitored, and molded really to deliver specific outcomes in your business. And what are those outcomes? We're talking about, efficiency, improved efficiency while we reduced the cost, improved quality, improved speed while we reduce costs. Now, if we don't have an intentionality behind these things, then they will never happen. And in order to create that intentionality, we have to do the looking. We have to be in the mode of discovery. We have to be willing to step on the scale. How many of us, when we get up in the morning, there's a scale in the bathroom, we just kind of walk on past that thing. You don't want to step on the scale because it's like, I had that little extra dessert last night. I don't want to look. Well, we don't do that here. We step on the scale so that we have clarity in what we need to do next. All right, so we're out here in reality with things, and we're creating something new. So tracking everything, your scale is comprised of several components in your business to be able to measure what's happening inside of it so that you can have a new action in your business to cause a specific result in your business and in your life. So planning for profitability, we are in this talk still, and we've been in this conversation right here. Income statements. Okay. And we've been talking about how we track and monitor things inside of business and what is an income statement really, and the things that it helps us with. It's also known as a profit and loss statement. It helps us get loans and track performance of our business, helps us make budgeting decisions and other financial decisions inside of our business. That is what an income statement is and what it does. Okay, so now we're looking at reading it, and we've been looking at all these little aspects of this income statement, and it can seem as though, I've run my business, and after the fact, this is what I'm actually dealing with. I've already had the activity, I've already made this much money, and I've had these costs, and at the end of the day, there's a net outcome. We call that a profit or a loss associated with it. And if it's something that's after the fact, a lot of the times, well, we just get what we got. And really, what we want to use this for is to plan something, plan an intention, something that is a result that we really want to create, specifically in our lives and in our business, or in our business and our lives, rather. What do I mean? Well, if we can see the pattern of what has been up until now, then we can start looking at what do we want to do now. And now when we talk about what we want to do, we go out there and plan to execute on what we want to do. And how does that measure up based on performance actually? After I said this is what I want to do, I go out here and I perform in the business, and I come back and say, well, did I actually do what I said I would do? Yes or no? This presents real ironclad clarity in business, where we can see if there are any gaps that we can bridge, and we can take the next action to bridge those gaps based on what we say we want to do. Now, how do we come up with those decisions? How do we know what's realistic for us to create in terms of what we want to do in the trucking industry and in your business? And how do we know if we're actually winning at the games that we play? All right, so we'll come back to this by the books philosophy. So let's get back into this conversation, guys. We've been looking at some real-time stuff over the last couple of weeks, and it was interesting because last year we were looking at fuel prices, and they were up there, and moving up towards $6 a gallon last year, 2022. And last year, we had this conversation, and I was saying, well, fuel is not really going to go back below $4 a gallon. That's really going to be the next base point for fuel. It's like this is a new high and it set the precedent. So now that $4 is most likely going to be a low, is what we said. So we've been talking about this, and it's interesting because a few weeks ago it hit that mark and it reacted. As it was stated last year, it reacted at this zone, this number of $4 a gallon. So what has that really been doing? Let's check it out. I love looking at real-time stuff, guys. I used to be really active in trading, Forex, and equities like indexes. Spent a lot of time there. Still look at investments from time to time, but I don't actively day trade anymore. But I used to do that. And a lot of the things that I used to do in day trading applied to like financial analysis and planning for profitability in businesses. And you're talking about forecasting and what the market is looking like what can I expect from the market right now, and then what's the high probability outcome in the future for what the market is, and how can I use that information, right? Because basically all you and I have are what we can see in terms of information, the information and knowledge base that we have, and then we have choice, and then we have actions. So we see exactly what's been happening, and if we understand like the information that we're looking at, this is the gap, right? So you and I really want to understand what we're looking at in terms of information. In case you didn't know, we've been in the information age for more than 2 decades. And it's not like even in the last 2 decades that this was something really new. Humanity in and of itself deals with information and how to utilize that. And who's ever heard the term knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is power. And really, it's not necessarily the knowledge that's power, but it's how I utilize the knowledge, like the application of the knowledge. That is true power in life. What is it that I actually can use this information for? How is it beneficial to me? What is in it for me when I look at this knowledge? How do I translate everything to make sure that I can understand it? If you've ever taken a language or learned a new language, it's like when we first look at this new language, we don't even know what it's saying, what it means. But as I progress and start to know some of the characters and the phonetics and the pronunciation and the symbols behind the language, I can put those things together into some meaning for myself, to the point where I can now speak that language. We did that with our native language. If you're here, you speak English. So at some point we had to do that, understand the information and make it mean something, so that now I can use it for something. I can use it for not just survival, which is a basic thing, but I can use it to create things in my life that I want. Such is the case with all information. Now, how am I going to use the information that I have in my hands? There's so much out here in terms of information, but what information can I use to deliver an intended result for me in my trucking company? That is a question each and every one of us in this call want to be asking ourselves. And this is the gap that we also want to fill. If I don't actually have the understanding of the information that's out here, where I don't even know what information I need to be looking at, well, this is where I want to begin. I want to begin a level of mastery inside of these areas, so that from now on, I'm actually taking the information that I need and it's relevant to me, utilizing it in a way that's going to deliver specific results time after time after time after time after time. That is what we're here for. We can do that, we win. So last year, around this time, this is last year. Boom, right? Last year, we're having a similar conversation. I said, okay, well, look at this, all this activity. Well, this is going to be the new low. It's going to come back down here, but it's not really going to go below here anymore. It's going to bounce up. And guess what? This is what happened a few weeks ago. It came down here, and now it's bouncing back up. Boom. We knew this. But how do we use it? Right? How do we actually use this to our benefit inside of what we're up to in the industry? Well, we understand cost and impact. You know, like the fuel prices, fuel costs really impact operations to a large degree. Now, I look at these things, and people in the industry will talk about fuel prices and average cost per mile in terms of fuel. And the numbers that they're getting, if you to look it up, they could be somewhat out there, like it misleading a little bit. But when you look at these things that we're looking at today, and we can do this for ourselves inside of the business, we can be in complete reality with this. Now, there is no time for myself when I actually go in and do the work and look at what's happening. There is no time where I'm not spot on with what it is that I'm planning. I'm really right in the ballpark, and it takes something to get there. It takes what we just said, understanding what information I need to know or need to have, and understanding that information and using that to create a high probability outcome, and then creating a plan based on that high probability outcome. So what am I going to do now? What's my next action? Well, I need to make sure I'm planning, like to make sure I have like these reserves put into place. I'm going to operate as if fuel is never going to go back down below $4 per gallon. I'm going to operate as if most likely fuel is going to hit a $6 per gallon mark within the next year or two. So I need to be prepared for that. I need to make sure like my hiring decisions take that into consideration. Well, how much can I reasonably pay people to drive for the company? How much can I reasonably pay people as administrative staff based on the high probability future? And I'm going to operate like that now. And if I get back down, like right now, if you're operating in the industry today, when we really want to make sure that we were already operating up until now, that fuel is going to go back up to $6 a gallon. And just call that extra amount that we make when it's not $6 a gallon a reserve. That would be a great action to take. Operate as if fuel is already at $6 a gallon, because it's going to go there. And there's still an opportunity to do that now. Right? When you do your cost analysis, you do your operational analysis, okay, to see, okay, well, how can I actually run this business as if it were costing me $6 a gallon for fuel? And what type of other actions, this is another action you could take, what kind of other actions can I take to make sure that that cost is ultimately reduced? What shifts should I make here where I am to ensure that's not going to be a major impact to me? What type of business will I take on in the future to reduce costs? What type of policy will I put into place to reduce that cost overall? All these things will be taken into consideration. Now I would have a whole new set of actions based on me thinking this way. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Now, the other thing that we're going to take a look at, this is very intriguing about how we can look at these things and get a high probability understanding of what's about to happen. Like right now, I already know, like I won't say that I know 100%, but it's high probability that this is going back up to around the $6. Really, it's going to, like this whole reaction point at $5.80 is most likely where this is going to give some trouble. Or before that, even before that, right here at $4.84, it's most likely where this will start going sideways or give a reaction somehow, some way over the next several months to a couple of years. Okay, so predictably, that's a high probability outcome. I can expect that most likely that's what's going to happen, just based on pure price action of fuel. Now, there is other things to take into account, like we have this whole Biden plan for Inflation Reduction Act that we want to take into consideration, but how does that really impact all prices overall with fuel? Those are things we want to take into consideration, but also there are more things to consider other than policies passed by the White House administration for inflation reduction. There's only so much that they can do in a free market. The free market always rules itself. Okay. And for this, the tendency is for it to give a certain pattern, and high probability is going to continue to hit that pattern over and over and over again, because it always has. That makes sense. So what is it? What do we actually take this into consideration for when we're talking about our business and planning this out? Let's just take a look. Actually, let's take a look at something else here too, because I haven't updated the spot market rates. Guys, are you getting something out of like looking at this every single week, like how this fluctuates? I'm doing this for a specific reason, like looking at this every single week, because I really want to shift the way we process things. Yeah, it does. It does make sense to look at this. Well, last week it did this, the week before it did that, and the week before that it did that. This week it's doing this. Man, life is not a mystery. Like, we can actually see a pattern develop, right? So I'm going to pull up, based on all the things we're seeing here, I'm going to actually pull up our spreadsheet, and we're going to take a look at this. Okay. All right, so this is fuel prices for this week. And last week, if we take a look, the national average was down more so. So it went up 3%. This is actual increase from last week, 3%. And this is increase from the previous week, was 3% increase. In the previous week there was also a 6% increase, which was a huge spike up on July 31st. And it's continuing to move up, a little slower, but it's continuing to move up. Okay. Which means that, your fuel cost per mile is actually going up considerably. Like, it went from 2 weeks ago, when we're actually in this conversation, from 69 cents, and it's up 2 cents now. Actually, it's up 4 cents now. Man, you guys get that every mile. It's actually extra 4 cents. It's like you just gave a driver a raise or something, And inside of this, we're looking at let's look at the van rates first. Van rates always come up first. I'm going to put these numbers in for the van rates. So this is the Midwest is now 220, and the Southwest is now 2.03, and the Southeast is 2.02. Northeast is 1.4. So, and the West, of course, 0.06. This is for van. Sorry. This is actually van rates, not reefer rates. So let me do that. 2.2, 0.03, 2.2, 1.84. Okay, so if I'm going to look at van rates real quick from the previous week and see what we were dealing with. So, yeah, so actually the rates went up a little bit. Rates went up a little bit in the Midwest, but overall they went down on average. Right, in the South. The Southwest, the Southeast went down, Northeast went down, and the West is actually 2.06. This went down as well. Okay, now if we look at the reefer rates, we got 2.64 here, got 2.36 here, we got 2.4 here, 2.19 there, and then we have 2 there. Now, if I take a look at the previous week, overall, the national average stayed the same. We went up a little bit in the Midwest. came down in the southwest and in the southeast. And in the northeast, we actually went up. And in the west, we just went down just marginally, which is not bad, man. So as far as what the trend is. So fuel, the thing is, guys, we've got an inverse relationship right now. Like, if we take a look at the percent increase, we do this, we take a look at this percent increase equals, I'm gonna take this minus divide that by that. So it's going to be 0%. This is going to look at percentage wise. It's like a fractional of a percentage. So if I take the percent of this thing overall, it's going to be 0%. If I extend the decimal point, it's really 0.17% of a decrease, right? But do the same thing here. It won't copy the same way there. So let me just do it fresh and new. I'm going to do that percentage as well. Keep building this thing out, guys. It's also decreasing overall. 0.49%. And let me just take this into account as well. So this is a national flatbed rates. This has gone down a little bit, 2.63. This is 2.52. This is 6.1. This is 2.6. This is 0.26. Okay, so that's what that is. And we can do the same thing and see what the trend is here. So we got to see a pattern starting to develop here. Percentage as well. Yeah, so this, flatbed went down significantly more. So the trend is more impacting in the flatbed area. So what does that really mean for us? So it went down 1.1% in terms of spot market, average spot market rates for flatbed. So to think about it, like there's a shift that wants to be made. It's like, well, at some point, like what's really impacting the profitability the most? There's some things to consider here. All right, flatbed is also producing more per mile in terms of revenue on average. Trend wise, it's taking the biggest hit. So if I was really expecting to generate a certain amount of revenue in flatbed, it's going to, not only am I dealing with the most increase, the most decrease in average revenue per mile for flatbed, I'm also dealing with the fact that the net effect of fuel is increasing 3%, right? So these are the things I want to look at in terms of, okay, what do I need to do now based on this information? Let's talk about it, okay? So I'm saying a lot, but I want you guys to see it for yourselves, okay? What do you think that is? What do we need to do based on what we see here?
off of that spot market.
Yeah, that'd be a great choice to get off the spot market, right? And now if there's a way to solidify things in a way where we're operating our business, like we said before, as if fuel was going to be $6 a gallon, just about $6 a gallon, then we can create contracts. We can create some value there for our customers and start pitching that value to customers to have a contract value that's going to be a certain amount, no matter what. It could be like, well, the contract includes the fuel surcharge amount of whatever it is. And that wants to be based on what you're thinking the market's going to go to. You can negotiate those things. You know, and why would they want to pay you when they could pay the other guy a certain amount less? We want to start thinking about those points as well. Because like the thing that all businesses face in certain, especially when we're talking about industries that have heavy competition, is being commoditized. Well, how do you step outside of being a commodity where people just price shop you? Because it's not just about what the price is, it's about what value you're delivering. Because they can go to somebody else, but they're not going to get the same service because they're not the same company, they're not the same people. They may get some similar things, but what is it that's going to make you stand out and break you out of the commodity? These are the things that we can sit there and think about and create for ourselves. We got to really do the work there to say, okay, well, why is it that I'm so different and so unique? I know that when people come to me as far as my business, they're not going to get the same service that they're going to get going to any other place. Nobody's going to deliver like I deliver. I already know that. I treat everybody's business like it's my own business. And then there's like a level of communication and accountability that comes along with that. I'm going to be a world where people feel like my pull for them to succeed in life, to move forward. Like that's the difference. Like there's no price you can put on that, because just by being associated with me, the companies just elevate. I've had companies gain, since they've been in my relationship, they've gained, you know, multiple seven figures just because they've had a relationship with me. Right. So there's no quantifying that. Well, there's a quantifying point there, like as far as gaining the amount, they're gaining millions and millions of dollars extra. Companies go from, 6 million revenue to 11 million revenue over 2 years. That's more than double, So those are the things that we want to start thinking about in terms of like, well, what is it that you can create inside of your industry? How is it that you're going to alleviate a pain for somebody as opposed to somebody else in your market? Now you can start negotiating those things like what you just said, Ron, and get those contracts out there. Say, okay, I'm going to actually deliver this for you. These are the promises I'm making to you that I'm going to keep. And you can actually monitor those things and track those things. That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've been absent for a couple of weeks. And congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome back. I see you got that tan going on, that Jamaican kiss tan. But no, but a couple of weeks ago, I'm sure you're familiar that the American Research Institute came out with the cost per mile. The minimum cost per mile is $2.25 for us to run out here. And I look back at your picture of the country and how it was divided in certain rates. None of them are touching that rate. Cost per mile. I think the highest you had on there was $2.25 or $2.20. So ultimately, so my question is, so in these, and this, what is this called? Your productivity analysis. How do we figure out what lanes to stay in? How do we figure out how do we get that number as far as where we can run? We may be able to run, pick up in the Midwest and, maybe be able to afford the 220, but where do we go from there to be able to get back? What is that lane that we can, get that good average, or how do we come up with that number?
Yeah, so you're looking at the flatbed rate right now inside of this spreadsheet. We're looking at the 220, and we can look at it, man. You see, like the Midwest is like, if I'm coming out of the Midwest, well, what makes the most sense here? There are other options there, like going from the Midwest Now it looks like, hold on a second, did I change that up correctly? Because if California is 206 for flatbed, is that what it was? Did I actually add that
Yeah,
up?
206.
Yeah, let me just make sure. Yeah, that is it. So there's like an inverse thing here. Getting I see, here's what was missed. Southeast 202, Northeast 184. That's right. Man, so I would never go to the Northeast. It doesn't matter. Like I would always have in the back of my mind, the Northeast is not a good place for me to go. A couple of reasons. One, it's like it's not paying me much to come out of there. So I'm eliminating that. Like if I'm doing a high percentage of that, and I get that from time to time it may require, in order to keep the wheels moving, that I do something like this. And I'm not really gonna be set up to make that decision often, if at all. All right. And so what decisions will I make? Well, I know that the next highest bank for me is Southwest, Midwest to Southwest. How many loads can we do between that in a week? Do we do a load every day where it's actually giving me a high payoff? These short loads that'll give me even more than $2.20 a mile coming out of the Midwest, going to the Southwest, like down to Texas, New Mexico, those regions, right? And am I planning my loads based on that? Because I already know the average in the Midwest coming out, Southwest coming out of there is 203, which is the next highest amount this week, right? So I'm looking at that this week to know, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And typically, if I look back across the trend in flatbed, that's been the case, that Southwest has always been number two. With the exception here, there was like a switch up here with this, I want to be aware of when that switch up happened, because before my plan would have been maybe looking at Midwest to Southeast and back up to Midwest, all those lanes that I'm looking at in order to run my business. I'm really, percentage wise, I'm looking to deliver that 1-2 punch. It's like if I'm on a boxing ring, man, what's my go-to? I got that 1, 2, 3. Am I going to do this hook right now? That really works for me. Nobody really sees that hook coming. When right now we see like these are the combinations that we can run, inside a business that makes sense. And when this changes up, like I'm actually in a different, like I'm on the fly with this thing. I'm in a different market situation from July 18th to August 14th, where this has switched over for me. Now my go-to number two is the Southwest instead of the Southeast. So I want to combine these things to make sure I'm running my lanes from flatbed to get the most out of it. I'm looking to get to these areas so I can continue to pull. Now, if I can't do this reasonably, if there's nothing coming out of the Midwest that take me to the Southwest, well, what's my next thing that I'm looking to do? I'm going to go to the Southeast. Or maybe, I'm sorry, in this situation, I'm looking to go to the West Coast. I'm looking to go maybe to the Pacific Northwest and pull a load out, right? That's how I would start to plan things. I already know, like average wise, what these areas are doing coming out. So I'm looking to combine these things in tandem to make sure that I'm coming out of these lanes that are the highest performing lanes, and I'm staying away from the lower performing lanes. All right. It just so happens that it's pretty, like the decisions right now, they're not detrimental, whereas before they were. What do I mean? There was a big gap between the Southwest and the Southeast before, and there's not a huge gap anymore. There was a transitioning of where it was outperforming one another, like one was outperforming the other, but now that switched, and they're really close right now. And before there was a gap between the two. So if I make this decision, it's not as high impacting as it was before. I can actually do a combination of Midwest, Southwest to Southeast, and even the West Coast. If I'm putting that into play, it's not really a huge gap like what it was before in previous weeks. It's almost the same. It's only 4 cents off, 3-4 cents off of what the Southwest and the Southeast are doing. What's very clear to me in this situation is stay away from the Northeast by all means. And I'm just thinking about all the other things that go along with that, as far as tolls, as far as mountains that we would need to go through if we're coming from the Southeast. like going through Pennsylvania, going through West Virginia, maybe, depending on where you're coming from, right? Going through these areas like DC where they slow you down, you know, like all those things, like like there's a combination of things that are in the background as well as just like it's just not worth it, right? I've heard of companies that I have somebody we're working with, their company, they're leased on to somebody, and that company likes to go to the Northeast a lot. Like, why? I know you have customers and everything. You want to service these customers, but you know, all that cost that that this person incurs by being leased on, it's just not really worth it to stay there and do that, you know, long term, because you're not really getting a whole lot of profitability. Now, here's the thing. If if you so happen to get this contract that we're talking about, that does make sense, well, then we can choose differently. But there's the variables want to match up, my friend. Like just for me being the spot market, if I'm out here just picking loads off a load board, Northeast, no, I'm not going there. Even if it seems like, well, I find one off, like a load that's going to be paying me like $3 or $4 per mile in a dry van situation, going up to, let's say, Rhode Island or Vermont or someplace like that, or I would not be tempted so much because I could get stuck there, incurring all these different costs, trying to find like a load out of there, because this is really the average, which means that sometimes you can get up in the Northeast and these loads only paying you $1 per mile. You know, but those are the things that I would be doing inside of planning. Can you guys? I want to check in. You guys see that, how that makes sense? Like we can see it like black and white here. There is a like a clarity inside of what we're doing here. And even so, even more so, if we can look at the profitability is where we want to take a real good look. Per mile profitability. If I'm in flatbed, I'm actually gaining about 84 cents a mile. I'm sorry, if I'm in dry van, I think I said flatbed. If I'm in dry van, I'm gaining 84 cents a mile. In the Midwest. And that drops off. I go from the Southwest moving down. This is interesting because typically it would cost me more to go into to the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, but it's actually the number 2 right now in terms of profitability per mile to take lanes there. So this could work this week. These are the things I would be considering. We could work to take loads out from the Midwest to the Pacific West if I'm in the spot market. Okay. Now, let's check in again, man. Do you see this for yourselves? Do you see how this could be really clear, like inside of a planning process? Let me hear your feedback. What I would like to hear is like, what is really gained out of being here in this conversation today, as far as opportunity inside of your operations? What would that be? Don't all talk at once. All right. Yeah, that's a great point there. Stay on top of this, the potential profit changes, and be ready to pivot. Yeah. So, and thanks, Baxter. I see what you're saying. The prices do vary per state. And Desmond, what you're saying there is totally spot on. Especially the last part of what you said is be ready to pivot. I have a coach that I work with. Last year, he told me that. It's like, you don't pivot fast enough. I was like, what? What do you mean? You don't pivot fast enough. You gotta be ready to make changes. And I was doing the looking, and I see there are opportunities to pivot really fast. Even inside of this conversation here, you want to be in the discovery of what it looks like to operate in the now. What decisions am I making right now that lead me to create this result that I'm looking to seek? And if we're flying like by the seat of our pants, which means that we don't have a specific intention inside of what we're doing, then we're already setting ourselves up to fail. What does a specific intention look like? Well, I want to turn this into I won't even say turn it into. This trucking company is a 8-figure company, right? That's the intention for this company to be an 8-figure company, always. 8-figure trucking company, which means that 10 million or more per year is what we do. So what are the actions that deliver that right now? Well, these are some of the actions that deliver that. Let's actually go over the number story. What's the planning process? And thank you, Charlene, because you said that, proper planning. And then how am I going to execute based on what I see in this plan? Okay, what day to day, what am I going to do based on this? So we're going to plan loads going from here to here. We're going to use this combination this week because this is how the market is adjusted for this week. Okay. So if I don't have that intention inside of it, like I'm kind of shooting in the dark and I don't know what that looks like. So if I'm taking this company to 8 figures, well, that means that a certain amount of revenue and volume must be done per month. How's that revenue going to be achieved per month inside of the process? Like, what is it that we're actually going to use our resources and energy for? Because it's going to take something. Like I have to do, if we look down here, we got to do more mileage here, right? If I wanted to hit a specific target, this is like a 40,000 per month target, a profit target, right? So I know if I'm in the Midwest, I need to do somewhere around with flatbed 10,400 miles a week to hit that profit target. All right. Now I know that if I'm doing reefer, I can do a little bit less, 10,300 a week, 330 a week. And then, I'm doing a lot more here with van work. I got to do 15,800. So I can do more with less here. I could do more with less here inside of the reefer market. So already my wheels are spinning. Well, how can I get like some reefer equipment on the fleet? How can I leverage that? What can I do to get that done? And I know there's some costs associated with it, like increased fuel costs. I know there's some increased maintenance costs possibly with reefer. And I would start doing that analysis there to see exactly what that's going to be, the net impact of it. If it's going to take us more so than the flatbed work, and I start looking at more so flatbed because that makes more sense, right? If I'm doing like flatbed, especially if I'm coming out of the Southwest, flatbed is winning. Flatbed's winning in the Southeast. Flatbed is definitely, we're not going to the Northeast at all, right? We're not doing that at all. All right, and then the West we'll stay away from for flatbed. But if I'm looking at flatbed, I'm looking at Southwest to Southeast runs, or Midwest to Southeast runs, something like that, because I know that my costs are going to go up considerably with reefer when I'm planning here. So I'm considering ding, 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 flatbed work, combination here. When can I shift, right? Because now we can actually add in maybe some other fees, like for tarping extra, maybe we could charge that for our contract rates or whatever it looks like. There's time involved with tarping and strapping down loads. So probably be doing less loads, which means more mileage in between loads, more long haul, more long distance load, because it takes a little bit to strap everything down. We can load it up and unload it. So load time is a consideration there. So you probably do more loads going further distance. So what I would be looking at is more so, Midwest, Southeast, longer distance travel. right? As much as possible. Or even south, southeast, southwest. Yeah. Yeah, those lanes will be ideal because now I'm creating a little bit of distance in between loads. I'm not having to stop and do multiple loads and get loaded up and strap down loads, taking the time out there. So those are the things that we want to consider inside of the planning. All right, so what else? There's so
I
much.
would just,
Go ahead, Ron.
I would just add that with the majority of the population being in the Northeast, it's almost impossible to avoid doing the Northeast. But maybe if we maybe consider some options that that we could do to still maybe go into the Northeast. For example, like maybe getting your rate going in, opposed to depending on a good rate coming out.
Yeah, you gotta find out what that number is going to be. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because right now it's like, well, loads that are coming out of that region, the average load coming out of whatever region is about $2 and some change. That's just the plain averages of it, the numbers, the facts of it. So if I'm betting on getting my numbers going in, that's reducing a probability just by even going along that line. And I get that a lot of the populations in the Northeast, that's not my consideration. My consideration is what's going to be the best profitability wise and outcome wise for my company. Yeah, if somebody can give me a contracted rate where I'm going to the Northeast for, 4+ a mile, then maybe that would be a consideration. That would even things out. Maybe, depending on the route and depending on the lane, because now we're talking about all these tolls in addition to it. What is actually the true cost of me doing all that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you'll definitely have to find your rate. I mean, and I'm not talking about going into, like Portland, Maine. I'm talking about like maybe,
That's
New York, Springfield, Massachusetts, and Boston, maybe. But yeah, ultimately you got to find your rate, because you still got tolls, like you said earlier, and traffic, etc.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that. There's a lot of risk involved inside of the traffic situation. Like people have to really have the driving skills to work in the Northeast. There are a lot of bridges. All of these things like pile up because now there are so many other considerations, and it wants to be high because of that. Like this is how I want you to start valuing yourself inside of the actions that you take. Is it worth it to me to do that? All these considerations. For one, I'm not going to get a load that's going to pay me more than $1.84 coming out. I'm just going to use that average as a cap. Right. I'm going to use that as a cap. That means that I'm going to get some things that'll be lower than that, but ultimately I'm going to average about 184 coming out of the Northeast if I'm running drive-in. So I'm also going to be dealing with hills if I'm not on 95 going up north. I'm going to be dealing with a lot of hills. I'm going to be dealing with tolls and bridges, narrow roads, traffic. I have how many way stations going up through that area that like to stay open. Yeah. And there's opportunity there for inspections and all these other things that go along with that. So it does have to be worth it, is what I want to say. Like there are some routes that we can run. I know that there are some routes that we can run on 81 going up to the Northeast. We don't have to deal with a lot of the tolls and a lot of the compliance things like inspections and everybody. They kind of leave you alone a lot for the most part going up the back route to the Northeast. And there's a cost of that too, as far as time and hills and wear and tear on the vehicle, right? Maintenance costs and everything else. So there's a lot to consider, right? There's a lot that says, okay, this is not in alignment with what I really want. What do I really want? I want to make the most. with the least amount of effort inside of operating. How am I going to perform that? These are what we want to start asking, the questions we want to start asking, and the clarity we want to have inside of decision making. Like, what is it that I really want? I want to do more with less effort, so I can stay in the zone. The drivers are happy. My customers are happy. I'm happy because we can outperform here. We can do a great performance here. We can focus on other things here rather than a lot of the other problems that can arise. All right, like me feeling as though I'm not really making out on this load now. I'm disgruntled because we're actually in some loads we're taking a loss in cases, because that's a possibility. Now we're going to take a loss, and then the customer, if we're not on time or something happens, and the client's going to be upset on top of the fact that I'm not making any money on it, so I'm upset. Right, you can see the spiraling effect of this thing. But the thing is, we want to be clear, like clear to the intention. Right, and anything that does not look like it, we want to stay away from. Anything that does look like it, we want to jump on it and hold on with both hands, 100%. So in terms of doing the looking, in terms of doing the planning, we want to have things aligned with that, more with less outcome. More with less outcome. All right. Hopefully, this has been enlightening conversation to be inside of. Right, it at least gives you a place to begin to think and process life consistently and reliably to deliver a result. All right. Any of the comments, any more additions to that? And like says, well, Ambassador, you had a good question. Why does the price change per region? It's a free market, sir. So in the free markets, it's supply and demand. That's what drives markets, supply and demand. Now, for interesting to think about, there are more trucks available in the Northeast, most because now the rates are so low. That means there's more competition up there. Basically, is what that is. The demand for trucks is not very high. The supply of trucks is high. Right. So that's one of those things, especially in the dry van region. Okay, for whatever reason, that's the case. And that's going to be the case for anything when it comes to economics and markets. The supply and demand are the primary drivers of that. All right, good deal, guys. I think that's it. All right, so good. I'm glad you guys got some value out of this conversation. I do. I get value out of these conversations because it is a place to keep thinking and processing life and then executing based on these choices that present themselves in the conversation. Okay. All right, guys, we are complete for tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for showing up. It's been a pleasure being with you. See you next week.
Yeah. Hey, Cheston,
Yes, sir.
just real quick. What I know I've missed one meeting. How can I go back, or are these recorded? How can I go back and view the one that I missed?
Yeah, so there was not one last week. Last week we had a power outage and we did not have one this week. So that was good.
Right.
But if you want to ever watch the recording, I think you guys are in the 10-figure business mastery Facebook group. These are running live stream and recorded there. They're going to be there to be reviewed from week to week. So once they're posted from the live stream, you can go back and watch those.
All righty. Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.